How you going, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fairdinkum Podcast. This week's episode is just me on the couch. Alhamdulillah, we have an amazing guest, Muhammad Faris. So he's an author of 2 books, The Productive Muslim and now The Barakah Effect. Alhamdulillah, he's made it all the way down to Australia and made time for us for this podcast. So we spoke a lot about all things productivity, spoke about hustle culture versus barakah culture and how we can change our lens in making the most of our lives, having high aspirations and also making the most of our daily routines and weekly routines. MashaAllah, there's so much here. I've got so many notes here of this podcast. I couldn't even go through it, but alhamdulillah, good episode, not too long, but alhamdulillah, got a lot out of it. You guys will definitely enjoy it. So see you on the other side.
So yes, because you haven't put your barakah goggles on, right? So when we start noticing these things, when we start noticing these gifts Allah's giving you, it just A, makes you more grateful, and B, makes you realize how blessed we are and how much barakah there is in our life, which makes us want to align, like I said, do those actions which might seem illogical, like getting up early, even though you might think, I didn't sleep that much, but I'll still get up for Fajr. Or reciting Quran when you think, I don't have time for Quran, but you still recite Quran. Or give charity when you feel like, I don't have enough money, but okay, still give charity. Do those actions which are spiritually intelligent actions. And
Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad. Welcome to the podcast.
Salam, Jazakallah khair. Thanks for having me.
So before actually starting into the podcast officially, I want to know about your time in Melbourne now, because you've been in Sydney for the past day or so, I would say.
Yeah, last week I was in Sydney, then went to Adelaide, and now I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah, so I want to know your opinion as well, because we like to get several guests' opinions of these type of cities and comparing them. What's your thoughts of these 3 cities?
Oh, good. I haven't had a chance to look at the cities. I'll be kind of in back-to-back workshops and interviews and all that. But in general, I'd say something I'm noticing about Australian Muslims, mashallah, is that there's a lot of people who are trying to do good things. And regardless of the background, regardless of... a lot of times, sometimes we kind of... I could speak about the US. A lot of times we expect like the scholars or the religious folks to kind of build institutions and to raise large funds, to do big projects. But here I've been to so many schools and podcasts and community projects, and this is so great to see that level of like initiative by so many different Muslims across all 3 cities that I've been through. I'm sure other parts of Australia. So just seeing that people are trying to do something, trying to push themselves, trying to serve the Ummah in one way, in any way, whether it's, again, a podcast or a social media or something. So it's been great to see that. So mashallah, may Allah put barakah everything guys everyone's doing, mashallah.
I mean, yeah, because one of the reasons why we like to ask that question as well, it's not just a reminder for the people that are listening from Melbourne and the Australian cities about our community and how much we're actually doing good things, and also just for people to hear from the outside and what type of community we are, because I feel like we're still growing, we're still very young. If you've noticed that as well.
Yeah, but mashallah, very active and very. Maybe because of the circles I'm with, but I've seen it very active, very involved. Even some of the ideas, like I've seen like a couple of social entrepreneurship projects. People have businesses that actually serve social causes. Again, I've seen in a couple of cities already. So just that entrepreneurship mindset, along with good intentions, along with hard work. It's good to see that. Like I find like there's a lot of creative ideas here as well, flying around. So mashallah, really inspired by it. Sure, alhamdulillah.
But Melbourne's the best one, isn't it?
The Sydney folk guys will watch this later. I gotta be diplomatic.
It's actually good they're not in the review.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Okay, so inshallah, so for the people that are listening and don't know who Muhammad Faris is, could you give a brief rundown before we get into more details of where you come from and also how this all started?
Sure. So I'm Muhammad Faris. I'm an author of 2 Islamic books, Islamic self-help books called The Productive Muslim and The Barakah Effect. Started a blog years ago called PALESTINE.com, connecting spirituality to productivity. Alhamdulillah, over the years, I've just been really trying to make this connection between spirituality and personal and professional development. Alhamdulillah, it's been great. It's been just a journey that I really enjoyed. I was born in Tanzania, East Africa. My ancestry from Yemen, Hadramaut, and grew up in Saudi, studied in the UK, lived in the US, now I'm in Dubai. So I'm just one of those third culture kids who've been all over the world. Alhamdulillah, just been on this journey of trying to, again, do something, contribute something meaningful, inshallah.
Do you feel moving places to places through your journey has helped you in terms of productivity coming into your life and the importance of it? Because I feel like the idea of productivity, because I still remember when it came into my life, and it's very vivid, because once you find out, oh my God, I can actually be productive and make the most of my life, it's like all this, it's like your mind's blown. How was it for you?
Yeah, 100%, exactly. Like, so when I was in university, had 2 jobs. I was doing master's degree. I was involved with the MSA in the university, and I felt busy. I felt like overwhelmed. And then I started learning about productivity, applying some productivity hacks. I'm like, whoa, this stuff works. I can actually do more, right? And just discovering that made me realize that this is such a cool thing to kind of go deeper, and got me excited. I guess the one thing that I did over the years was trying to take that knowledge. Not usually we kind of go out there, we read the self-help books that are out there, and apply them in our lives. Initially, the idea of Productive Muslim was to take all that I was learning about productivity and applying it and kind of share in the Muslim world. But then the flip came when I started to recognize what is it within our faith itself to teach about productivity. And that's not something you often hear, right? You don't hear khutbah about productivity usually.
Yeah.
So I felt like there's a gap here where in the Quran, where in the Seerah, where in the history of Islamic civilization talks about productivity, and realize, it was there but in a different language. They talk about barakah. They talk about, for example, the idea of, making the most of Allah's gifts for you. So it's a different language. So when I started looking at that and applying it in modern life, that's when it becomes really interesting. It's like almost like rediscovering this treasure we had, or this world view we had about productivity that perhaps was not shared before, which alhamdulillah has been great to kind of be in that journey.
So when this was introduced to you, so you said 2 jobs, university. What age was this? About 22?
Yeah, I was I was doing a master's degree, so probably 21 years old.
Okay, I'm just trying to paint the picture.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about in terms of the first few people that were introduced with? Because like you said, by the sounds of it, it wasn't really Islamic view, it was just in general.
Yeah.
And that was the exact same for me. And I feel like for most people, there's more resources of the general productivity, but not linked to our faith.
Yeah, David Allen, Getting Things Done, and John Maxwell books, and 7 Habits, and a whole lot, right? All the classics. Again, useful stuff, 5 a.m. Club, Miracle Morning, GTD, lifehacker.com, Engadget. So I was always interested in the intersection of entrepreneurship and on productivity, tech, kind of software tools to use, systems, right? That's what I really enjoyed. And then I started that way, and then I remember actually shutting the website down after 2 months of starting it. I was like, who reads this stuff? But 6 months later, I decided to reopen it again when I came across a hadith that says, "Burika li ummati fi bukuriha." There's barakah for my ummah in the early hours. And I'm like, wait a second. Every productivity book I'm reading says, wake up early, wake up early, wake up early. And I realized it's barakah. That's the secret. That's when I realized, whoa, what if we start, instead of asking what's out there for the Muslim world, but what's within our own faith? And once you kind of wear those goggles on, right, when you start seeing every Quranic verses and a hadith from that perspective, you're kind of getting all these insights you never thought of before, and start sharing that with the world, alhamdulillah.
That's very interesting. Because also when, you start to develop the idea of productivity, you're taking on these routines and whatnot from these books. Because I understand, like, a lot of people get the ideas, and I even get ideas of, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then actually taking action, and even just the idea, like, yourself wanting to create a book, because sometimes some people look at creating a book like, I have to be someone big.
Yeah.
I have to have a big name to me, a big CV. Who am I to create a book? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, the taking action part, I remember in November 2007, so when I first started, I had to remember waking up early in the morning. SubhanAllah, again, this is sometimes Allah puts things in your mind. The words Productive Muslim pop in my head, right? You just like, Productive Muslim, like, you're like, ooh, I like that name, right? I remember going Fajr, coming back and just running back and just booking the domain name and starting a Squarespace, website, and just like starting to blog, like taking that immediate action. And I always wondered, if I didn't do that, if I just said, let me think about it, let me just sleep on it, I probably would not be doing this podcast with you right now, right? It's that early action. It's like just running with, once when an idea hits you, just solidifying it. Kind of like, I'll say, like, the idea is like a seed, and taking action is like planting it. So just plant the seed. You never know what's gonna go. Just plant the seed. Do it. Just don't worry about how it's gonna happen and all resources you need. Just do it. Same thing with the book. So that after a few years of blogging, I had almost like a body of knowledge that seemed to be building up, and I was like, I wonder if we can turn this into a book, because that's why almost like you see the next step, right? I call follow the breadcrumbs. I didn't sort of start a blog thinking I'm going to write a book. I just started a blog thinking I'm just writing a bunch of articles. But a few years, you realize, well, what's next? I've written almost like, a few hundred articles and how many people are benefiting. What's next? And you look around, well, people in this space usually write a book. And I remember sitting next to in a conference with, and I remember just bumped into my publisher, to be honest. And I said, hey, I've got this website called Barakah Muslim. It's got 1 million followers on Facebook, and I want to, write a book. And he goes, sure, same proposal. And I had no idea what book proposal was. So I researched what the book proposal was, wrote a proposal, which actually helped me think through what exactly the book should look like and who's it for. Wrote a proposal, sent to him. He goes, great, write the book. Like, oh, okay, I guess I have to write the book now. So that's when the writing journey started. And alhamdulillah, it's been a journey, and it took a while longer than expected. But it was, again, I'll say writing books is one of the most rewarding things to do. Even though it's hard, even though it's painful, because it really takes a lot out of you. But it's one of those, it's like, it really is like Productimus.com before the book came out and after the book came out, it's two different companies, like two different phases of my life. Once the book came out, you're now an authority. Suddenly people see you as an expert because you wrote a book about something.
People look at you differently, yeah.
Exactly. So it made a huge difference. So I always recommend people do your research, of course, build that body of knowledge, have that special angle that you bring to the table, like that special perspective, and just start writing.
The irony is that you're probably applying to everything you're writing at the same time while you,
Yeah, 100%.
in terms of just getting out of your mind, gaining clarity, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely. I mean, it's almost like writing a book is very therapeutic because you are the one because you're writing for yourself and you're trying, and this is another thing, sometimes people tend to, when they write books, they're trying to write as if they're writing to some random person, or they write very generically, or nowadays ChatGPT, right? You just like whatever kind of space. But you're writing for yourself and you're kind of trying to scratch your own itch. So what's that itch you're trying to scratch? For example, I had questions about Barakah, or questions about Barakah that's bothering me, like, what about this, what about that? And when someone the reader sees that you're trying to answer the question, like, oh my God, you're thinking like me, I had the exact same questions. That's when you connect with the reader, because they know you're not just trying to translate information. This is how you become productive. Wake up early, right? It's you actually, how do you wake up early when you have work? Or if you wake up early for Fajr, how will that impact your performance at work? So you have questions you're trying to answer, and you're trying to answer them through your research in your book, and the reader benefits as well, along with your curiosity.
You're trying to be more relatable as well to the reader.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's another thing about something. I'm not an expert or something. Like sometimes when you write a book from your perspective, you bring in an angle that someone who's a big shot or someone who's like well known, or someone who's well researched cannot bring, because they can't relate. So you have somebody who, let's say, who studied really deeply. They might find it hard to relate to, let's say, same age or same experiences. So I'll say every book brings its own angle and perspective, and it's so important to bring your full self to the book and not just try to kind of sound professional, right? Sound like, sound like some kind of, sound like who you're not. Just write from your heart, write as if it's you. Should sound like you, should feel like you, inshallah.
Yeah, I've realized also, not just with reading, just in terms of social media and the internet itself, how relatability has become so much more popular, and that there's a term called, like, I don't want to say it like big content creators or middle content creators.
Interesting.
Or middle authors per se, like, big names, middle names. You're trying to create another term from having big names, that they are becoming more relatable and they're becoming more popular over time. And because people are starting to realize, like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Whereas compared to a millionaire, how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Got it. It's again, as a follow the breadcrumbs, it's like where you are on your journey, right? And kind of people's like, okay, if he's a few steps ahead, I can catch up to that, versus, oh my God, the guy's like miles away from me.
And how's your journey been in terms of reading books in general? So I know, of course, you've created a book, alhamdulillah, yourself, but then also just continue on reading other books, developing your knowledge as well, because I find a lot of people label themselves and say, I'm not a reader, or it's not for me, I can't sit still. But I feel like everyone's a reader. They just got to find their own book. They got to find their own interest, because I think people forget that there's a vast amount of books you can find out there. People are thinking, I'm not that type of person to want to improve myself, this and that. So how's it been for you in that journey of constantly finding books to read?
Yeah, someone told me when I was at university, which was very helpful, said, Hamid, whenever you struggle with something or you have a problem in your life, know that someone somewhere wrote a book about it. And I found that really helpful because if I'm stuck with anything, business, family, relationships, anything that I'm just confused about, stuck about, there's a book about it. Or nowadays, unfortunately, we just like ask ChatGPT or we just Google it, right? But when you read a book, you're getting the summary of someone's like life work, right? You're getting years of research or years of experiences summarized in a few hours, right? So I feel like sometimes it's the idea of imagine finding smart person. Let's say you have a challenge in a business, work, family, something you're struggling with, and then you sit with somebody who's thought through the exact same challenge and giving you a summary, an action plan of how to move forward. Like that's priceless. That's like you're getting a very expensive coach for like $20, right? Or $30.
Exactly.
It's so useful. The one thing I'd say is in the journey reading books is that
Sorry.
the one thing I'd say about the journey reading books is that I become more critical of the books I read, and especially the books that are very secular, because every author comes with their worldview. And I would say to people, like, read with a faith lens on, because unfortunately, especially in self-help world, right, there's a lot of books out there that some that pass ideas to you and they kind of seep into our culture that you don't aware the spiritual implications of them. It's either very secular, either very myopic, either thinking about very dunya focused, right? The akhirah is not even there. So I tell people, like, read, especially self-help books from a faith perspective, a faith critical perspective, because you don't want to just be wholesale importing stuff in your mind, your values that might not align. Things like, believe in your own destiny and you could do whatever you want. And
you're in full control.
Yeah, full control. And so you always have that faith angle, like, is this really aligned with my faith? Does it make sense? I'm not saying don't read books, beneficial books, but always have that mindset. And just follow your curiosity. Like, what are you curious about? For example, like sometimes just reading books that are linked to your stage of life you're in. Let's say you just got married, read about marriage. You got first kid, read about parenting. You about to think about alhamdulillah, making some money, think about investing. Like, read books related to the stage of life you're at and the challenges or even opportunities around your stage of life, and you'll find it really useful. And keep it simple. Like, I keep it very simple, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. That's my reading time, unless I'm doing some research. So 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, sometimes half an hour here, that's an hour a day almost, plus some audiobooks when I have to go for a run or go on the treadmill or something like that. So it easily finish a book a week, right? And then you're like, alhamdulillah, you learn something over the course of a year.
Yeah, I find with myself, so in terms of reading, I love reading and it can change my worldview in a good way as well. But I find recently that I lack focus. So I'd love to talk to you about the idea of focus, where to start in terms of balancing with like life distractions. Just honestly, distractions in itself, I think developing focus and maintaining focus is the number one, probably most difficult skill right now.
100%. And I talk about productivity being made of 3 pillars: energy, focus, and time. And the hardest one is focus. Energy you can handle, like sleep and nutrition and all that. Time you can, also handle in terms of, how, calendar and all that. But focus, you can have all the energy in the world, you can have all the time in the world.
Yep.
But without focus, it's just, your productivity goes out of the window. So with focus, I talk about 3 distractions, or 3 things. Number 1, manage distractions, like you mentioned. So there are, of course, external distractions, your phone, internet, social media, people around you. Internal distractions, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and life events, right? Sometimes stuff happens, right? There's an illness in the family, there's a death in the family, COVID, right? So with those external, internal, and life distractions, a lot of times we think we cannot do anything about them. And I challenge that. I'm like, what can you do about that? What can you do about external distractions, right? You can choose when to check your phone. You can choose which apps you have on your phone. You can choose how often you check your phone, right? So you have to almost create the environment to help you manage that. The people around you, let's be distracting. Well, you can choose, where to work, where to go. The internal distractions, for example, I'll say, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. That's why things like journaling, things like sometimes just doing a brain dump. I do something called Gylio, which means get your life in order. Gylio, get your life in order. Every Saturday morning, I go to a coffee shop and I sit with my trusted journal and I just do a brain dump everything is on my mind. I'll put in a brain on that.
It's a once a week thing.
Once a week thing. It's like a maintenance thing. Then I look, okay, these are all the stuff on my mind, all the stuff on my mind, all the projects involved with, all the things I have to do, and then make a conscious decision. Will I delete some of this and say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore? Will I defer some of this, do it later? Will I delegate some of this, ask somebody else to do it? Or will I do it? I have to decide. And that just really clarifies my mind so that when I get in the week, I'm ready to proceed. And the third thing I would say is that, life events, of course, is something, sometimes, things happen in your life, right? Whether it's a major event, good event, vacations, kids get sick, some, parents are getting ill, old, need some help. And you just have to almost like work with those, kind of like you can't stop life happening. But when you have a clear focus what you do, you go with them. So my distraction is very clear, external, internal, and life. Then I talk about making sure that you have practice focus hygiene. Just like I have sleep hygiene, it's like focus a muscle. You need to really, so for example, sitting reading the Quran for long periods of time, that develops your focus muscles. Salah for a long period of time, that develops your focus muscles. Doing adhkar, where you're doing nothing else, you're just sitting doing adhkar. You're not checking your phone, you're just sitting.
Yeah, that can get very difficult if you don't do it for a while.
Yeah, you're doing adhkar, just sitting after in the masjid from Fajr till sunrise, not moving, doing adhkar, like that develops your focus muscles. Also exercise. I find something when I'm really distracted, I just go for a run or go for exercise. And then I come back, I find myself much more focused. And even sometimes like just breathing helps as well. And final thing is once you decide, khalas, let's say I'm going to work on something at 10 o'clock, I call a focus session. What I mean is that for the next 25 minutes or half an hour or 90 minutes, depending how big the task is, I'm not going to check my phone. If I have to turn off the internet, I'm just doing this one task. Usually my writing task, 'cause that's the hardest thing I got to do.
Yeah.
Do my one task. I'm not going to move until the focus session is over. So that way, even if I don't achieve the task, the fact I've completed, let's say 1 or 2 or 3 focus sessions on this one task, I'll feel good. I feel like I made progress versus feel like, oh man, I just sat 2 hours, I didn't do anything. Say, have you done at least one focus session? Awesome. Feels good. Next day, another focus session. Third day, another focus session. You feel like you've completed X number of focus sessions per task. And that really helps you feel like you're making progress, basically.
Yeah. I did notice you said in terms of your journaling on Saturday mornings that you didn't use, because the easy option is to just do it at your dinner table, at home. But you're choosing on purpose to go to a new place. I don't know if it's a new cafe every time, but it's still leaving the house, going somewhere else and writing in this journal. How is it for you in terms of environment? How does that play for you in terms
100%.
of productivity?
Yeah, I mean, changing environments help a lot. So your usual environments, your home office or your work office or your home, those are great, general day-to-day stuff. But sometimes you need to kind of like a fresh perspective. And sometimes it's going to treat yourself to a nice brunch somewhere, nice coffee somewhere, early mornings. In my case, the kids are asleep in the weekend. That's after Fajr sometimes. There's a coffee shop that opens really early, 6:30 in the morning. Great. So I go. It takes half an hour, 1 hour max. Just go there, clear your mind, do your galio, and you come back, you're fresh. You come back, you're like, alhamdulillah, I feel like, I can go into the weekend and actually enjoy the weekend, not with stuff on my head. Oh my God, do I need to do this and do that? You've clarified a lot of stuff that are back, sitting in the back of your mind. So definitely, environment plays a huge role, and as much as possible, the more you can. There's a great book called "Willpower Doesn't Work," where it talks about how environments play a huge role in us, having that willpower to do things.
Yeah.
So whenever you find yourself being unproductive, yes, there's stuff you can do, but also check your environment. Is there something that environment I can tackle or manage to help me get things done?
Even in terms of environment, it's not just for like a writing schedule, journaling, whatever it is, but then I also find for salat. Like, yes, of course, in Adin, it's encouraged for us to pray more salat at the mosque, but then we don't realize as well the environment that plays with it. Praying obviously in a group as well, taking your time with salat. I even find, because I now work at a school, I'm a high school teacher. Beforehand, I was working elsewhere in the city where I was the only Muslim staff member, praying by myself, sometimes with another brother after my shift. But now I'm praying at a Muslim school, I'm praying in Jama'ah. I have the time for sunnah and adhkar, and it feels effortless. And that's where it clicked in my head. I'm like, environment has just changed everything without even realizing. So how do you find in terms of making the most of your salat? Because obviously you're not always going to get the chance to go to the mosque as well. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I try to make it a point to at least, especially if I'm near a mosque or close to a mosque within a drive, to make an intention to go to the masjid. So I even plan my day around salah. So I also tell people, plan your life around salah. Don't plan your salah around your life.
I love that.
So when you set your calendar for the week, like I actually have salah times blocked out of my calendar. So no meetings happen around that time. I give myself enough time to get to masjid and pray and come back. So having those time blockers, so it's there, makes a huge difference. And even sometimes when it's inconvenient, right? For example, especially in the winter months in the US, sometimes like Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib comes back to back.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, this is tough. So I even work close. Sometimes I'll work in a coffee shop next to the masjid. Just like, pray Dhuhr, come back. Pray Asr, come back.
It's non-stop, yeah.
But again, I'll also think about what else can I do in between those. But I'll have a longer stretch of time in the morning, example. So you plan your life around that. You plan around the seasonality. Like you said, it makes a huge difference in terms of, especially when you're there early, you make wudu, you pray a sunnah prayers, you do a dua, sometimes read some Quran. It feels so much more of a spiritual experience that actually helps you to disconnect from this world and reconnect to the akhirah. And it's such a powerful thing to do when you disconnect, right? From like you're plugged into this whirlwind hustle culture and you kind of disconnect from that and then you kind of like focus on the akhirah, right? That sort of shift is very powerful. You know, being able to do that 5 times a day. And of course, if you're traveling or if you're in a busy environment and just taking that time out. The other day we were in the airport, had to pray, so just disconnect, connect. I feel like that's such a powerful thing. And even though I don't like to turn salah into like a focus exercise, it's an act of worship, right? So you perform it. But however, there are, of course, we cannot deny, the more focused you are on your salah, the more you experience focus outside salah. It's like your brain gets rewired to be able to focus and calm down and not be like jumping all over the place, basically.
Yeah, I do feel like the statement you said about planning your life around salat.
Yeah.
Because there's also a quote that I've heard from another self-development person, but they said discipline equals freedom. And what I've realized with that, just for myself personally, when I pray my prayers on time, everything else kind of works in its favor. Whereas those days where you're praying, Asr late, just before, sunrise, and you obviously have that guilt as well in it. Unfortunately, it kind of has subconsciously, it feels like a guilt action where it's like, it's kind of in the way, whereas it shouldn't.
SubhanAllah.
So
there's a saying by Hassan Basri saying, if you're late for your salah, everything else in your life will be late. So like your rizq will be late, your projects will be late, like everything else becomes delayed. Like for you to be the first to salah, it's almost like you saying, Allah, you're my priority, and He'll make things work out for you because you'll show that you are a priority. If salah is like a last thing in your mind, then all right, everything else will be delayed because of you're not taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seriously in terms of that invitation. So it's definitely a reminder, because as I talk about the Barakah culture, Barakah goggles, where sometimes you just have to make those spiritual decisions, which might not make logical sense. So you said, I'm busy, I'm working, and if I take a break for salah, I'll take away time from my busy, from my schedule, and that means I might not be able to get my work done. But you saying no, salah is more important, right? I'm going to go pray, and khair, things work out.
Everything else can wait.
Yeah, and that making that decision, that commitment, that sacrifice, Allah sees that, and that's where the barakah comes in.
Let's talk more about that. You said barakah goggles.
Yeah,
that was actually very interesting. I've never thought of that. So, unfortunately, I was a bit busy. I couldn't come to the other events, but I'd love for you to speak more about barakah goggles and just always thinking about barakah.
Yeah, so
with your new book.
Absolutely. So one of the things I realized, I'm doing research on barakah, a lot of people complain, there's no barakah in my time, no barakah in my wealth, no barakah in my children, no barakah in my home, no barakah in my business. So, people tend to complain a lot. And I'm like, let's define barakah. And we tend to think about barakah as purely the kind of the increase, especially material increase, right? When you have lots of money or lots of wealth or lots of children. And yes, that's one form of barakah. But there are other ways to experience barakah. For example, when you have stability in your life, stable health, stable mental health, stable relationships, stable income or financial situation, alhamdulillah, not go ups and downs, but in general stable. That's barakah. When you have continuity in your life, you start a project that you continue doing, you haven't stopped, that's barakah. When you have inner peace, despite a difficult situation, let's say you're going through a tough situation, something that's from outside looks like, I don't know how you're handling it. But you're content, alhamdulillah. You're saying, alhamdulillah, fi khair, you're radi, you have this contentment. That's barakah. when you have an overwhelming situation, let's say you have a huge debt or a legal case against you, something that's like feels like, I don't know how I'll get out of this, but somehow Allah works it out. Things ease up, facilitation. That's barakah, right? When you have ideas or insights or people sending those random messages of support, comments, say, hey, Jazakallah khair, that was a really good show, really appreciate it. Like that gives you like almost like that push. That's barakah. So I tell people like, so then when I share that and I ask people, hey, tell me when have you experienced barakah now in your life? So they're like, oh my goodness, there's so much barakah in my life, I haven't realized it. So I'm like, yes, because you haven't put your barakah goggles on, right? So when we start noticing these things, when we start noticing these gifts Allah's giving you, it just A, makes you more grateful, and B, makes you realize how blessed we are and how much barakah there is in our life, which makes us want to align, like I said, do those actions which might seem illogical, like getting up early, even though you might think, I didn't sleep that much, but I'll still get up for Fajr. Or reciting Quran when you think, I don't have time for Quran, but you still recite Quran. Or give charity when you feel like, I don't know, I have enough money, but okay, still give charity. Do those actions which are spiritually intelligent actions, and that also attracts more barakah in your life. So I feel like it's just a different perspective of something people already know, but just seeing it differently sometimes helps to highlight that, basically.
It's definitely always a reminder. That's what we need. And how is it for you in terms of reminding yourself, and how often, about barakah, putting those goggles on, or just getting back in the zone? Because we can get very carried away. We consume a lot in our day, more than we should really these days, but that's just how the world is now. How is it for you to personally bring yourself back to ground level and focus again?
Yeah, so whenever I find myself agitated, anxious, stressed out, or just like, right? You're not yourself, right? You're like all over the place. That's when you're like, okay, I need my barakah goals on. Like, be grateful, be thankful. What do I need to do more? I need to stop making wudu, pray 2 rak'ahs. I need to recite my Quran. I need to do more adhkar. Like, you're trying to almost ground yourself, because you're like, something seems off. I maybe have misalignment with Allah. I need to align with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that just having that frame of reference, instead of just living with that stress and anxiety and agitation. Okay, I need to realign. It gives that almost like that, alhamdulillah, that comeback, right? That you can, within a few hours, alhamdulillah, I feel back, I feel good again. Maybe sometimes I feel like, oh, I didn't fast for so long, let me start fasting again. Or I haven't read Quran for a long time, let me restart reading Quran. Or, I need to improve my relationship with my extended family, right? The idea of that there's barakah when you connect with all those uncles and aunties and grandparents.
That's a hard one.
That's a hard one, right?
That's a hard one, because you get too invested in your own life.
That you forget.
I've got so much going on, you kind of forget about everyone else.
That's it. So you just have to pick up the phone, call the auntie, call the uncle, call the grandparent, call that, and just, hey, assalamu alaikum. Maybe that's awkward, and they're like, yeah, you okay? Why are you calling?
What do you need?
What do you need, yeah? Just want to send salam to you. Like, okay. How much money do you want? Like, no, I don't want money. and that's when you really connect, and that's when you kind of bring barakah in your life. So I have a worksheet called Barakah Go. Is it the Pokemon Go? The Barakah Go. Like,
that's nice.
Instead of finding Pokemons,
yeah,
find barakah. And I put like 18 sources of barakah. People look, and this one is a source of barakah in our lives. Going for Umrah, if you're able to go for Umrah. Avoiding sins. Really checking, is there a sin that I'm committing that I need to think about and fix myself from? So you become always conscious of it, and that helps you align yourself more, inshallah, barakah.
I find from the information I consume when I listen to authors, they mention about when they tend to forget about some of the information they put in their book as well. Because people that aren't authors, maybe not yet, or just in general not authors, we tend to look at these people that have made books thinking that
they've figured it out.
Yeah, they figured it out, that they'll never forget about any information they have in their book. How is it for you? Do you ever forget about some information? Because Allahumma barik, like, there's a lot of good information in your books, but I tend to forget a lot of the information in your book. So I don't know if you keep the information stored up there, or you forget them at times.
I think, like I said, like sometimes when I realize I'm off misalignment, I'm right. Okay, what is it in my books or my research that can help me get me back in alignment? When I feel unproductive, okay, what do I need to do to get back to it? Like, sometimes I'm also distracted. Sometimes I find myself overwhelmed. Sometimes I find myself, my energy is low. Like, what is it in my research helps me to come back? That's why I love teaching. Because when I teach, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, it reminds you as well.
Yeah, I should be doing this as well.
Yeah,
so I love teaching. That just helps me to realign, bring it back. And sometimes it might also challenge what I already wrote. Because I'm like, maybe what I wrote is not right. Maybe there's something else here I need to think of. Maybe there's some life experiences now I'm getting older. There's some life experiences that I wasn't aware of when I was younger, when I wrote the first book or second book. So that really kind of helps you kind of also question and challenge what you already wrote, and maybe realize maybe you made a mistake, or there's something else you can improve, or there's a different way of thinking about it. For example, when I wrote Barakah Muslim, right at that time I was still just got married, didn't have my first child yet. Now 3 kids in, right? And after 10 years, more than 10 years of marriage, you're like, okay, there's stuff of productivity I need to tweak a little bit because it's not all the same.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of, and that's why it's, some scholars say don't write a book before the age of 40. And I understand why, because, you go through certain life experiences. By the age of 40, hopefully you settle, you decide you've grown up to write about them. But at the same time, alhamdulillah, no regrets. I think, I'd say 80% of the stuff there is still valid, still relevant. It's just that the 20% something you always need to improve.
Of course, yeah.
Tweak, yeah.
What was the age you released Productive Muslim?
Gosh, I was...
Roughly?
This was 2016, so I was 8 years ago. So I was 30 years old.
Okay, mashallah. There's one part of your book that I would love to speak about is social productivity. In terms of not just energy with the people around yourself, like external and internal, but also the type of people you're hanging out with and how much time you're spending in those sections. Like, for example, family, friends, co-workers, all these other sections. How do you find that in terms of how it plays in your lifestyle and productivity?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've done when I started my journey of... one thing I've done when I started my journey Barakah Muslim, I recently created, in 2017 actually, I created a little WhatsApp group. Myself and Peter Gould and Chris Bloveld. Peter Gould, of course, runs Gould Studio. Chris Bloveld runs Launch Good. And all 3 of us run our own businesses. All 3 of us have young families. And all 3 of us felt it was very lonely to be an entrepreneur, right? So we created almost like a sohbah. Even though we were like different parts of the world, we're not in the same city. But having that sohbah, that journey, people kind of get each other. And what we do is we meet every quarter almost to share where we are in our life and then get advice from each other. And once a year we meet in person and actually sort of give, also do like a macro journaling. Yeah. So that's been really helpful, very healthy to have that. So to your point, it's like the sohbah you have, because sometimes, especially if you don't have mentors or you don't have specific people who you can refer to, the best you can do is have good friendships. So in addition to your close family and relatives and kind of being aware, tying the ties of kinship, as they say, select the people who really kind of help you on your journey, which was what you want to do, and just be consistent in kind of showing up and invest in those relationships. You just gotta have to put in the effort, the time, the money into those relationships, whether it's buying gifts, whether it's flying to meet them, whether it's just having a call once a quarter. So kind of invest, especially as adults. Sometimes we don't invest in friendships, and we end up sort of, as we get older, kind of lose our friends as everyone gets busy, and then you find yourself by the end of it, like you're kind of lonely, right? So you need to kind of figure out, those friendships that I want to maintain. You keep those friendships, you invest in those friendships. Of course, you have different circles. I have my cycling friends, I've got my running friends, I've got my, entrepreneur friends, I've got my people I meet. But then who are the really close friends that you want to invest time in? And those are people that actually give that energy, the focus as well, to continue to be productive, because they will push you, they will give you feedback, they will let you know when you're off the track. So that sohbah is invaluable, mashallah.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to at least start to think about their social life just holistically, if it's too much or if it's not enough, because either or, you can be on one extreme or the other. Yeah. Or you could be the rare, you could be right, perfect, but at least you give it time to reflect about it, because I feel like hustle culture is so big now that you can easily get carried away, because I see online these self-help people saying you should be working 12 hours a day on what you want, full-time job, work in the evenings, and that's like, but we forget about the Islamic what's the word, obligations of like, whether you have a spouse, whether you have your parents, your family, time for that, time for prayer. It's a lot different to what these guys live. So How do you find hustle culture? And what's your not your stance, but how's your relationship with hustle culture? And
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a whole article about hustle culture versus barakah culture because I felt like we needed a new definition of productivity
yeah,
that's not seeped into hustle culture. It's just hustle culture is very worldly focused, very egocentric, very material success driven, versus barakah culture is very God centered, akhirah focused, and purpose impact driven. And that means sometimes, like you said, sometimes you might have to reduce your performance in the work part of your life to increase your performance in the role of you as a son or as a father or as a husband. Sometimes you have to, make certain sacrifices because, let's say, I remember even simple things like attending a funeral, right? Sometimes I got work, I got meetings, but subhanAllah, someone passed away. Like, take a moment to attend a funeral, or inviting guests over, or being invited, right? So it's, that's why there's the 6 rights that the Muslim has upon each other. One of them is attend a funeral, they invite you, accept the invitation. So Muhammad Sallallahu gave us these kind of groundings to make sure that we maintain our social relationships. We don't live this kind of like individualistic, kind of like, it's me, myself, and I don't care about the world. Islam is a very social religion. One of the interesting first hadith that Prophet Muhammad said when he entered Medina was the famous hadith says, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ أَفْشُوا السَّلَامِ وَأَطْعِمُوا الطَّعَامِ وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ نَاسِيَامِ. Spread salam, which means greet each other, meet each other, right? Spread salam with each other. أَطْعِمُوا الطَّعَامِ, feed the people. So that's social, community work, serve. And then صَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ نَاسِيَامِ, like pray at night when people are sleeping. So 2 of the 3 actions are almost like community actions or outward actions, and one of them was a private action. So having that, sometimes we need to move from an individualistic mindset to a community mindset, and that, yes, it comes sacrifices. It's inconvenient sometimes, but that's again part of the barakah mindset that I'm doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah would barakah my time if I attend a funeral, or if I accept someone's invitation, or if I serve my parents, or if I need to work on a brother calls me, needs help, and he's in the hospital, and I need to drop everything, go see them. Like, that sort of perspective is very important.
MashaAllah. I can imagine a lot, like some people even listening to this that are maybe even like starting off with self-help, productivity in their life, they might come across thinking that you have it all worked out. That's their perspective. Like, I know how it was for me getting into productivity and seeing these people. I'm learning so much. Like, whoa, you've got it all figured out. Like, that's what it comes across as. In terms of, because I love your idea of like journaling Saturday mornings. I'm actually going to try that, inshallah.
Awesome.
But I want to know, do you have any journal prompts or like things you work with? Because some people will be like, okay, brain dump, I'm going to sit down now. They're sitting there with their coffee at the cafe. Where do I start?
Got it. So one of my prompts that I recommend is, what's your intention today? What's your intention for next week? And I like the idea of intention versus like goals, to-dos, right? Because when we write goals or to-dos or tasks, we become very outcome results driven. But sometimes it's intentions. Like, what's my niyyah for this week? My niyyah is that I want to just be a better father this week, right? My niyyah is to be a better child. My niyyah is to be a better, my niyyah is to complete this part of the ihsan. When you start thinking intentions, it becomes much more pure, much more focused, much more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus checking off to-do list kind of thing. So what's your intention? It's going to be a very powerful way to think about it. The other prompt I'd say, like, if you're just overwhelmed or feel you're critical about something, right? Or you feel like, oh, what am I doing? I'm struggling with this. What are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for this week? What happened this week that was actually really good? I actually am grateful for this and that and the other. So gratefulness is very powerful. Another thing is, what did you learn this week as well? Or last week? Or what do you want to learn next week, right? So those kind of prompts, intention, gratefulness, learnings, can be very powerful to help you kind of like think outside the box. We have a Barakah journal. This is not a plug, but we have a Barakah journal where we actually, that's the prompts you ask. So what's your intention for this week? What did you learn this week? What are you going to focus on next week? What are you thankful for? What are the Barakah moments you experienced this week? That's going to be very powerful. But in terms of the get your life in order stuff, honestly speaking, it's just, I make a grid. Like I put like a product Muslim, family, personal, and then like any special project I'm working on. So product Muslim, all of my work stuff, my company stuff, all the family stuff I have to figure out, all my personal stuff, and then all the sort of anything that's really special I need to kind of give extra attention. And that's when I just dump. So then I go one by one, like delete, defer, delegate, do. And that helps me clarify my mind.
MashaAllah. Okay. These are really great stuff. Like, of course, we're doing it for the viewers, but I'm taking it all in myself.
Bismillah,
like, I'm going to write these down. I'm going to watch it again, inshallah.
Awesome.
This is good. Also, there's another thing I want to talk about, because I have done some of these. I've seen prompts online as well, not Islamic related. That's why I asked that. But I'd love to, because I've thought about myself in terms of ideal day, ideal week, and ideal day. I would love to implement Tahajjud, because I remember a time, which is crazy. I feel like I'm old, but I'm not, because I'm 27 right now. I was 20 years old, living in Jordan, overseas with my brother. And you're living in a different society, and you feel like, okay, now I'm creating my own schedule. Like, there's only one, what's the word? Obligation I have, the one responsibility, which is Arabic studies. That's why I'm there. But I have all this extra free time. Let's create this schedule. And I was actually sleeping at 8 p.m., waking up 4 a.m. And this is like a 20-year-old kid. My brother was 18 doing that. I'm thinking, how on earth did we get here? But then now I come back 27 years old. I don't think I've gotten to that schedule, even close to it. Obviously, I can blame society, pressure, influence, all that. How is it for you in terms of building routine? Because I did see in your book about 4 a.m. starts. How is it for you keeping this routine?
So the first thing I'd say is start. The one thing about, you remember I talk about following the Hijri calendar, because when we align us with the Hijri months, we align with the sacred months. For example, now we're Rabi al-Awwal, for example. So it's just this month that reminds of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So the thing about Hijri calendar is that the day starts at Maghrib. It doesn't start at Fajr. So you start your day thinking about your day from Maghrib. So at Maghrib, like, what can I do today, tonight, to help us start Tahajjud, right? So if the day starts at Maghrib, then you're like, okay, if the day starts at Maghrib, a lot of us, what we end up doing is wasting our after Isha, especially after Isha period. After Isha, we want to meet people, want to go out, talk to people, and that unfortunately eats up into our
Isha, even the prayer gets delayed.
So then what I tell people is seasons, right? The seasons of life. Some seasons, in the winter seasons, when Isha is very early, that's a great time to sleep early, wake up early for Tahajjud. When Isha is very late, I actually recommend people to, if you're not sure you're going to wake for Tahajjud, pray your Qiyam al-Layl witr before sleeping, right? There's nothing wrong. I mean, the fact that you just want to get a portion of the night. Sometimes we think we should be like robots, machines, right? I got to wake up every day at 4 a.m. no matter what. No, you're not a machine, you're a human being. Isha gets late, pray Isha, and pray Qiyam al-Layl after Isha, 2 rak'ahs, 4 rak'ahs, witr, go to sleep, wake up Fajr. Isha super early, awesome. I can pray Isha early, I can sleep early, I can wake up 4 a.m. and it's still nighttime, great. So I think just being in tune with the seasons versus having this kind of like strict times if you're your clock, especially when you live in a world like this in Australia, Dallas, or US, where the seasons change drastically. In the Middle East, other parts of the world, there's tropical areas where things doesn't change enough. You can keep a consistent routine. Second thing, so start planning the night before. So the day starts at Maghrib. 2, be in tune with the seasons, right? And 3, it's almost like, what is that small consistent habit I can stick to, right? Sometimes again we get this ambitious goal. I want to pray 8 rak'ahs of Tahajjud plus witr, 11 rak'ahs. And you find that very hard. If I say, hey, just 2 rak'ahs plus witr, okay, I could do that. Like, a small commitment is better than long. So what you do is like plant the seeds of the habit and let it stick before it kind of make it bigger and grow it, versus kind of do big goals and I want to do like this much Tahajjud and wake up in an hour before. Even if you wake up 10 minutes before, half an hour before, if you want to do that. Or like I said, praying after Isha is a way to kind of capture the Qiyam al-Layl. I think we always tend to think like we have to do the Tahajjud part. And I recommend people, if you're just struggling, if you have never prayed Tahajjud in your life, pray Qiyam al-Layl, start Qiyam al-Layl. And slowly Allah will guide you, inshallah, make it easier for Tahajjud. So don't like it either or, nothing, all or nothing mindset. That gets in the way as well of Tahajjud, basically.
What works for you personally? I want to use the terms evening routines, morning routines. This is what goes around the self-help world. What works for you in these routines? So what are some things, for example, like now you're traveling, what are some things you still have to do no matter what? Like for some people it might be, I still have to exercise for 15, 20 minutes.
So for me, having Fajr. Fajr is something in the masjid as much as possible. Alhamdulillah, brothers have been very kind and helped me to figure out where to go for masjid. Adhkar sabah, so that the evening prayer adhkar, after the morning adhkar, evening adhkar. So make adhkar before sunrise, before sunset, or around sunset sometimes. Quran, like I really, in fact, sometimes I actually travel with my copy of the Quran, even though I have it on my phone. But just having the Quran in my bag, knowing like I need to read this. Because if it's my phone, I'll probably ignore it. So I actually travel with a copy of the Quran just to kind of force me to, you got to recite it. You've been carrying it. You don't just carry weight with you. You're actually going to use it and recite it. Exercise is huge. Again, I try to go for runs. Sometimes depends on the schedule sometimes, but go for runs as much as possible. That's the way I love to discover the city, as well as I actually benefit from that.
And I've heard about that. It's a good idea.
And get over jet lag as well. Like this is one way how to help getting jet lag. The first day I landed, first morning I went for a run, sunrise. Like that helped me kind of get over jet lag and not get overwhelmed. Those are my non-negotiables. Then of course things like praying. Of course, if you're traveling, you can combine prayers, but pray with it before bed. I find that helpful. So just having these like non-negotiable routines, which like these are non-negotiable. These are things I was trying to stick to. And then if one-offs, and then it's almost like, again, it's not perfect. Sometimes there'll be one-offs. Let's say you're just completely tired. You go to sleep. Or something like today, I didn't exercise in the morning. I was so tired. I prayed Fajr, came back and I slept. Usually I never sleep after Fajr, but just, again, I was just so tired. So you just have to kind of move with listen to your body, right? But don't make it into a habit, right? So you try to make, there are exceptions, of course, to the rule, but you have these kind of rules set for yourself, these boundaries set for yourself. And yeah, I think the beautiful thing about Deen is, alhamdulillah, that's why sometimes the idea of routines, we can get philosophical about. We think we need to be like machines, right? Like khalas, every day, 4 a.m. No, you're not machines, you're human being, which means you should have to yourself the malleability to kind of like shift with the seasons, shift with the life circumstances, but still structure. So then that's where the balance is. Have some kind of structure to keep your day together, but also be flexible enough when things don't go your way and don't align with how you want things to be. Yeah. And I think that's the hardest part, because you want to be like, oh no, I got to follow this exact routine.
Yeah, we can fall into the trap of, because there's so much information out there that we're trying to optimize our life. Because for me, I even realize I catch myself out. If I'm not 100% doing this routine of what's working, I missed one thing. Okay, I'm not going to do it. I'll do it later.
Exactly.
So I'll just say an example. I'm training for a marathon, my first marathon in...
Oh, I'm with you, man.
About 6 weeks.
I'm with you. Oh, it's okay. Mine is till January. I still have time.
Oh, you're doing marathon as well?
Inshallah, my first one in January. That's my plan.
MashaAllah. So we're in the same boat. Okay. We've got a lot to talk about off the podcast as well. So for me, because it's my first time training, I know myself. Praying Fajr at the mosque, going for a run straight after is my ideal morning routine. Yeah. But for the past few weeks, I've been struggling because maybe in my head, subconsciously, I'm saying, okay, I slept in too much. I'll do a short run. Oh no, I can't do the short run. I'll do it later. Yeah. And it gets delayed. Next thing you know, there's a few days I've missed. And it's like trying to create that balance of, if it's not 100% optimal, 100% perfect, I can still do it. So I think it's just like that relationship with yourself and just still getting it done, even if it's not the best.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's called the better than nothing rule, right? Something is better than nothing. Going for a short run versus no run is better. Better than nothing rule. Sometimes praying some qiyam al-layl versus no tahajjud, like better than nothing rule. So sometimes, you just have to not let the all or nothing mindset get in their head. And some days are good, some days are bad, some days are not perfect. But if you just get in yourself like something better than nothing, you usually end up doing it. And alhamdulillah, you find it. I'm actually making progress. Looking back at all those days you thought were not perfect, but you actually made some progress.
Exactly. You've probably answered my question right now. Then I was going to say, you can say something else if there is another answer to it as well. Advice to your younger self or other younger people starting this productivity journey. Actually, not even if it was younger, because there's actually people my age and older that kind of get introduced to it. Just anyone starting their journey. What advice would you give?
So the general advice I gave is is have sincere intentions, work hard, detach from results, right? That's a good general rule. Meaning that have an intention what you want to do with your life, with your just how you approach life in general. What's your intention for your life? That's usually connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then work hard, take action. Don't just sit and expect miracles. Like, you got to take action. You want to write a book, you got to write a book. You got to do the action. Don't just, sometimes we just kind of wait to expect miracles to happen. No, you just take the action and detach from results. Like, the results not up to you, results up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that's kind of the general advice. And then comes the part about, okay, well, how do I make those daily decisions? Like you said, this are called smart choices with your energy, focus, and time. So, for example, okay, prayer times, I'll put those. When do I sleep? When do I nap? When do I eat? When do I exercise? When do I connect with my family? When do I do my projects? When are my focus sessions? So you start kind of structuring your day, structuring your week. I'm a calendar guy, so I structure my whole week like back to back. You know, I put like time blocking. But then here's the hard part is detach from that at the same time. So be ready. Like even though you have a structure for your day, you have a structure for your time, for your week, don't get too caught. Don't leave like you call death by the calendar, right? You just completely consume like, oh, sorry, I can't move because my calendar says I can't move, right? It's like, no, it's like life happens. Your kid falls sick. Be flexible to move things around. Have a mind like water, right? It's have a mind like water. So it's not just complete like I can't change, can't move because I'm supposed to be a robot. No, you're not a robot, human being. So have those intentions, work hard, touch results, have a structure, have a plan, but have a mind like water. So don't be too attached to that plan, basically.
Yeah, Bruce Lee was right.
Inshallah.
Well, Muhammad, Barakallah Feek for coming on. Honestly, I think this type of episode, even for myself being on this episode, on the couch, I'm going to have to listen a few times, write some notes, inshallah. But you've gave some amazing gems, inshallah, and people have benefited from it.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. I appreciate this, and may Allah be barakah everything you do, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Nice, inshallah. We'll keep all the links to Muhammad Faris and what he's doing with his books, workshops, tours, and all that, all in the show notes, inshallah. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.